I think that if hell exists, it probably has its own standards, and I am certain I wouldn't qualify to enter even after death. Not even hell would take me. I stopped being human a long time ago because no human should ever take pleasure in killing or raping, and yet I did. I once savored those moments as proof that I had the power to decide who lived and who died. Now, decades later, I sit here alone, haunted, ashamed, and disgusted by the man I became, carrying the same nightmares, the same stench of death, the same memories that have followed me since the day the Vietnam War ended. I live alone now. The neighbors barely see me, and when they do, I can feel their unease. My hair is white, my back bent, and some mornings I can't even remember if I've eaten. But there are things I never forget. I never forget the feel of blood drying on my hands, or the way a woman's scream cuts through the air sharper than any bullet. Those things stay. They cling to the walls of my mind like mildew, like a rot that no amount of time can scrub away. I wasn't always this way. There was a time I thought of myself as a good man. I had a family, a small-town upbringing, a sense of right and wrong. I thought war was about defending freedom, about protecting the innocent. I believed the posters, the speeches, the proud handshakes. I believed the lies. Vietnam stripped that away from me faster than a match to paper. I remember the air first. Thick, wet, and heavy enough to choke on. The smell of mud mixed with smoke and something sweeter, more rotten. I remember the constant noise, rotor blades thumping, insects whining, distant gunfire that never truly stopped. Even then, before the first drop of blood touched my boots, I felt a kind of nervous excitement. I was 20 years old and thought I was stepping into history. I didn't realize I was stepping into my own damnation. The years have blurred in places. Some faces I can't recall, but others are carved so deep in my memory they may as well be tattooed on the inside of my eyelids. Sometimes I wake in the middle of the night, certain I can still smell burned hair, certain I can still hear the pleading in a language I barely understood but didn't need to. Begging sounds the same in every tongue. People think that when a man gets old, he softens. They think he grows wise, maybe even peaceful. But age doesn't make the past kinder, it sharpens it. My hands shake now, not from fear, but from the weight of what they've done. I can't hold a cup without spilling, yet I can still remember exactly how to chamber a round, exactly how to press a bayonet into flesh. That knowledge never leaves you. I'm not telling you this because I want forgiveness. Forgiveness is a word people use when they still have a chance to redeem themselves. I don't. I'm telling you this because somewhere out there, someone young is hearing the same speeches I heard, seeing the same flag-draped parades, feeling the same rush to sign their name. They think they're ready to be heroes. They don't understand what that word will cost them. My war never ended. I brought it home in my bones. It's in the way I look at shadows, in the way I can't stand the smell of wet earth after rain, in the way fireworks in July make me flinch like a beaten dog. People call that PTSD. I call it the bill for what I've done. And trust me, no one can afford it. Sometimes, on cold nights, I sit by the window with a glass of whiskey and watch the streetlights blur in my vision. I try to imagine the faces of the people I hurt, as if naming them could somehow anchor them to this world again. But the truth is, I don't even know most of their names. They were farmers, mothers, children. They were in the wrong place when I decided to be God. So here I am, an old man with nothing left but the echo of my own crimes. I've outlived my unit, my wife, and my son. The war took them all in different ways. Bullets for some, my bitterness for the rest. And every night when the house is silent, the war comes back for me too. In the dark, I can hear them. The villagers, the women, the children. Sometimes they're screaming. Sometimes they're just watching. And that's worse. If you're still listening, remember this. War will strip you bare. It will take the man you think you are and grind him into the dirt until nothing's left but the animal. And when the war ends, the animal doesn't go away. It lives inside you, waiting, gnawing. That's the real injury, the moral one. The kind you can't show on an X-ray, the kind no surgeon can cut out. I'm not here to make you pity me. I don't deserve that. But maybe, just maybe, my words will make you think twice before you chase the same path I did. Because I promise you, it doesn't lead to glory. It leads here, to a quiet, dark room where an old man talks to ghosts no one else can see. The journey to Vietnam began with the smell of metal and sweat. We were packed into the belly of a troop transport ship for weeks before the airstrip even came into view. The bunks were stacked 3 high, the air stale, our skin sticky from the salt in the ocean air. Some guys played cards, others smoked until the walls seemed to breathe nicotine. I wrote letters I never sent. Mostly I stared at the ceiling and wondered if the war would really be like the training films, clean, quick, and righteous. When we finally flew in, the noise hit me first. The transport plane groaned as if it hated every mile we forced it to fly. My ears rang from the constant roar of the engines, and the air inside the cabin felt like someone was breathing hot breath on the back of my neck. We didn't talk much on that flight. Most of us were trying to be brave in front of the others, but you could see the tension in our eyes, in the way our hands gripped the rifles that had yet to be fired in anger. Then the doors opened. It was like stepping into another world, a world that had been waiting for us with its jaw open. The heat was a living thing wrapping around me, squeezing the breath out of my lungs. The humidity was so thick it felt like walking through soup. My first breath tasted of wet earth and something sharp, like gun oil mixed with rotting leaves. And underneath it all, faint but there, was a smell I couldn't name at the time. Later I'd know it as the smell of old blood soaked into the ground. We clambered out of the plane and straight into the chaos of the tarmac. Rotor blades from nearby helicopters whipped the air into violent gusts, flinging grit into our eyes. Trucks backfired, engines roared, orders were shouted over the noise. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked, sharp and urgent. Sweat trickled down my back, soaking my shirt before I'd even taken 10 steps. The base was a jumble of tents, sandbags, and mud. Men moved everywhere, some laughing too loudly, others with faces so tight they looked carved from stone. We were herded into a briefing area, but my eyes kept wandering, to the horizon, where the jungle crouched in the distance, dark and impenetrable. The green looked deeper than any green I'd ever seen back home, almost black in the midday sun. It seemed to breathe. That first night I lay on my cot listening. Not to the chatter of my fellow Marines, they faded into the background, but to the sounds outside. The jungle was alive, a constant, restless chorus. Crickets, frogs, the occasional scream of something I couldn't name. Every so often, a far-off pop like someone snapping a stick, only sharper. Gunfire. I told myself it was distant, that we were safe here. But my heart didn't quite believe it. I still remember the taste of the water that first day, warm, metallic, faintly bitter. I remember the feel of the dust settling on my skin like a second layer. I remember the way the local air made my uniform cling to me, heavy and damp. I remember seeing the faces of the Vietnamese workers on base, thin, watchful, their eyes sliding away quickly if you stared too long. I didn't think much of it then. I thought we were here to help them. They told us we'd be going on our first patrol within 48 hours. The sergeant grinned when he said it, like it was a joke only he understood. I spent that evening cleaning my rifle 3 times over, as if that would prepare me for what waited beyond the perimeter. Some of the guys bragged about how many VC they'd rack up, using the word like it meant target, instead of human being. I laughed along. That's what you did, you went along with it. I thought that was what being a Marine meant. But something about the air here felt different. It wasn't just the heat or the smell. It was the way every sound seemed to carry weight, as if the jungle was listening back. When the wind moved through the leaves, it didn't sound like trees, it sounded like whispers. I told myself I was imagining things. We were given a quick tour of the perimeter the next day. Barbed wire, machine gun nests, and the red dirt paths that led to the watch posts. Past that, the jungle rose like a wall, thick and wet and patient. The lieutenant said, "Beyond there, that's their world." I looked at that green wall and felt a strange mix of fear and eagerness. I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to show I belonged here. Looking back, I realized that eagerness was the first step toward losing the person I had been. I was too young to see it, too full of the stories I'd been told. I thought we were liberators, that the flag on my shoulder meant something pure. I thought we were the light in a dark place. I didn't know the truth. I didn't know that, for the people who lived here, we were the darkness. And I didn't know that every step I took in this place would take me further from the man my parents raised. That night, as I lay sweating under the thin mosquito net, listening to the thrum of helicopters and the low drone of the insects, I closed my eyes and pictured home. I could see the fields, the white church steeple, the face of a girl I'd been writing to. For a moment I felt safe. But then I heard it, a single gunshot close enough to make me flinch. The camp stirred, boots on gravel, voices calling out. I lay there frozen, the image of home fading into the thick, wet dark around me. And somewhere in that darkness, a truth was waiting. A truth I would only learn much too late. I didn't know that what I brought was not freedom, but darkness. I didn't have to wait long to find out what lay beyond that green wall. 2 days later, before the sun was fully up, we were ordered to move. The air was still cool from the night, but heavy enough to promise the heat that would come. My boots sank into the damp red dirt with each step, and the jungle seemed to close around us the deeper we went. Every sound was swallowed, our breathing, the soft clink of gear, until the only thing I could hear was the beat of my own pulse. They told us it was a routine patrol. Check a few villages, keep the roads clear, show presence. But in Vietnam, routine didn't mean safe. We were halfway to the first village when it happened. It started with a sound I couldn't place at first, a single sharp crack that didn't belong to the forest. Then another and another. Bullets snapped through the leaves, close enough to make the air tremble. Someone shouted, "Contact," and the whole world erupted. The jungle exploded in noise. The pop and hiss of AK-47s mixed with the heavier thud of our M16s. Leaves shredded above my head, dirt kicked up in my face. I dropped behind a tree, heart slamming, trying to see where they were. Shadows moved between the trees, here and gone in an instant. Screams cut through the gunfire, some in English, some in a language I didn't understand. A man in front of me spun and went down, blood blooming across his chest. Another Marine crawled toward him, dragging him by the collar, but the next burst of fire tore through them both. The smell hit me then, hot metal, gunpowder, and that thick, coppery scent of fresh blood. I fired back without thinking, just shapes in the green, anything that moved. My hands were slick on the rifle, my breathing ragged. Somewhere in the chaos, my fear began to harden into something else. Anger, cold and sharp. By the time the shooting eased, my ears were ringing and my mouth tasted like pennies. We'd lost 3 men. Another was screaming for a corpsman, his leg a shredded mess. The lieutenant barked orders, his voice flat, already planning the next move. There was no pause for grief. We were told the fire had come from a nearby hamlet, that the shooters had melted back into the village. The order was simple, clear it. We moved fast, staying low. My heart pounded, not from the run but from the memory of those bodies lying in the mud. I wasn't thinking about rules of engagement, or who might be inside that village. I was thinking about payback. The hamlet came into view, small huts, thatched roofs, smoke curling from cooking fires. A few chickens scattered as we approached. I saw a figure dart between 2 huts and lifted my rifle. No uniform, no weapon, just movement. The anger in my chest flared and I pushed forward. We stacked outside the largest hut, the sergeant counting us down with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. I kicked the door and stepped in, rifle up, and froze. It wasn't a firing position or a hidden cache of weapons. It was a single room, dim and smoky from a small fire pit. An old man sat in the corner, eyes wide, hands trembling in his lap. Beside him, 2 women clutched children to their chests. One of the kids couldn't have been more than 5. The whole scene registered in less than a second, but my body moved before my mind could catch up. I squeezed the trigger. The sound was deafening in that small space. The old man's head snapped back. One of the women screamed, a high, tearing sound that still slices through my dreams. The other kids cried, clinging tighter to their mothers. My vision tunneled. The rifle felt impossibly heavy. The others burst in behind me, shouting, sweeping the room. One of them swore under his breath when he saw what I'd done. But no one stopped. No one said, "What the hell was that?" We were too deep in it. We left the hut as quickly as we'd entered. Outside, the air felt different, thicker, heavier, as if the jungle itself knew what had just happened. I didn't look back. I couldn't. That night, lying under the mosquito net, I tried to tell myself it was a mistake anyone could have made. That it had been dark, that movement meant danger, that hesitation could have killed me. But the truth was there, gnawing at me. I pulled the trigger before my eyes had time to see they were innocent. And once you cross that line, there's no going back. After that day in the hut, something in me shifted. I didn't think of it as a breaking point then, more like a door had opened inside me. Once it was open, it never shut again. The fear I'd carried in those first patrols didn't fade, it transformed. It became a cold certainty that hesitation could kill me, and that my survival was worth more than anyone else's life. And so, when the next orders came, I didn't question them. It started with an IED on a dirt road. 2 Marines dead, 1 screaming with half a leg gone. We swept the surrounding area, and a scout said he saw movement in a nearby village. The lieutenant didn't waste words. We go in, clean it out. We approached at dawn, the sky barely gray, the air damp enough to cling to the skin. The village was quiet, too quiet as the cliché goes. Chickens scratched in the dirt. Somewhere, a dog barked once and went silent. The first shot came from behind one of the huts. A Marine dropped, clutching his throat. That was all the permission we needed. We fired into doorways, windows, anywhere a shadow twitched. Grenades went into huts before we entered. The thatched roofs caught fire fast, the dry palm fronds curling in the heat. Smoke rolled through the narrow paths, thick and greasy, burning my throat. People ran, men, women, children, and we cut them down as they fled. One woman stumbled with a baby in her arms. She fell forward, and the child rolled in the dirt, wailing. The sound cut through everything for a second, but my finger stayed on the trigger. We were past thinking. By the time we were done, the whole village was burning. The air shimmered from the heat. I remember standing there, rifle still hot, watching the flames eat the homes, the animals, the bodies. The smell was different now, charred wood mixed with roasted flesh. I didn't feel guilt. I felt untouchable. Like nothing in the world could challenge us. We had erased an entire place in less than an hour. It was later that same month when we hit another village. No firefight this time, just an order to search and secure. We lined up the men and boys outside, guarded by a couple of Marines. The rest of us swept through the huts. That's when it happened. I was with 3 others when we found her. A young woman, maybe late teens, hiding under a pile of mats. Someone yanked her out and she kicked and screamed. One of the guys laughed and made a crude joke. Another held her down. I didn't step back. I didn't stop them. I joined them. The details are still clear, though I wish they weren't. The press of bodies in that small room, the smell of sweat and dirt, the way her screams changed from rage to something hollow. I remember her eyes, wide, wet, locked on me like she was trying to burn my face into her memory. When we were done, she lay still. Someone muttered, "Check if she's breathing." She was barely. We left her there. Outside, the men and boys were still on their knees, faces blank. They must have heard everything. No one said a word. If I'd been the man I once was, I might have felt shame. But the man I'd become felt only power. It was like we had stripped away every rule, every limit. We could take anything, lives, bodies, dignity, and there was no one to stop us. The worst came a few weeks later. Intel said a hamlet was sheltering VC. We were told to go in hard, take no chances. The captain's last words before we moved out were simple: no witnesses. It was hot that day, the kind of heat that makes your shirt stick like glue. We surrounded the hamlet, moved in with rifles raised. A couple of shots rang out from somewhere, but they were scattered, panicked. After that, it was methodical. Huts cleared one by one. Anyone inside was shot. Old, young, it didn't matter. A boy came running from behind a pig pen, maybe 10 years old, and one of the guys cut him down without breaking stride. I remember stepping into one hut and finding a woman kneeling by a low table. She was praying or maybe begging, I don't know. I shot her in the back of the head. By the time we were done, the hamlet was silent. Bodies in the dirt. Smoke rising from the last of the burning huts. Flies already gathering. I stood in the middle of it, rifle slung over my shoulder, and felt something I've never told anyone. I felt like a god. Not the kind in church sermons, the kind in nightmares. The kind who decides without question who lives and who dies. And I liked it. I once took pleasure in holding the power of life and death, like a diseased god. That's the truth I've carried ever since. At the time, I told myself it was war. That these were the things men had to do to survive. But deep down, I knew survival wasn't all of it. We crossed lines we didn't have to. We destroyed because we could. We hurt people because no one would hold us accountable. And once you realize you can do anything without consequence, you start to wonder why you shouldn't. That's when you lose yourself completely. Up until that night, I thought I had buried the last piece of who I used to be. We had done things, terrible things, that no one back home would ever truly believe, and I had learned to shut the door on whatever part of me still knew right from wrong. I wore my cruelty like armor. I told myself it kept me alive. But then came that night. We were moving through a small settlement under the cover of darkness. The moon was just a thin blade in the sky, and the air smelled of rain that hadn't yet fallen. Our boots squelched in the wet dirt. We'd been told the area had seen enemy activity, and we were to search and clear. By then, I knew what those words really meant. We fanned out, rifles ready, checking huts one by one. I was near the end of the line, sweeping the edge of the village, when I heard it, soft, almost too quiet for the human ear. A whimper. I followed the sound around the back of a hut. My flashlight beam cut through the dark, and that's when I saw them. A woman lay crumpled in the mud, her hair matted with blood. Her chest didn't move. Draped over her was a little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, her tiny hands clutching the woman's torn shirt as if holding her together could bring her back. The girl's face lifted toward the light. Her eyes. I can't put into words what was in them. They weren't just afraid. They weren't just sad. They were ancient. Like she had seen everything worth knowing about the cruelty of the world in one moment, and would carry it forever. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just looked at me. In that look, there was accusation, and there was something worse. Understanding. As if she knew exactly what I was and what I had done, not just here but in every village before this one. For the first time in months, my stomach twisted. A deep, rolling nausea surged up from somewhere I thought had long since died. I turned away, gagging while burning my throat. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my rifle. I told myself to move, to finish clearing the area, to keep going. But I couldn't make my legs work. I stood there in the dark, the sound of distant gunfire muffled in my ears, every part of me locked on those eyes. One of the guys called my name. I didn't answer. The girl didn't move, didn't let go of the woman beneath her. And I didn't move to help her. I don't know how long I stood there before someone else came around the corner. He saw me, saw the girl, and without a word he kept walking. That's what we did back then. We didn't speak about it. We just left whatever we didn't want to carry. But I carried that. I carried it out of that village into every step I took after. I carried it back to base. I carried it into my sleep that night and the night after and every night for the rest of my life. When I finally made it home years later, she was still there. She followed me into my dreams. Sometimes she was still a little girl, mud on her face, eyes locked on mine. Other times she was grown, her face older, harder, but the eyes were the same, unblinking, accusing, knowing. I've woken in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, my hands clenching the sheets like I was back there, trying to stop myself from throwing up. I've sat on the edge of my bed at 3 in the morning, whispering apologies into the dark, knowing she'll never hear them. That night was the first crack in the armor I'd built. And once there's a crack, you start to see through it. You start to see the faces again. You start to hear the voices. You start to realize that whatever you told yourself to survive was just a lie you were willing to believe. Her eyes taught me something I didn't want to learn, that survival at the cost of your soul isn't survival at all. Those eyes followed me all the way back to America. They crawled into every dream I've had since, turning them into a nightmare without end. And I know they'll be there when I take my last breath. Those eyes were still with me when the war finally spat me back out. I stepped off the plane into bright American daylight, and the first thing that struck me was how clean everything looked. The sky was a clear, impossible blue. No smoke. No smell of burning. The ground didn't tremble under the weight of helicopters or distant mortars. For a moment, I almost believed I had left it all behind. But the welcome was not what I had imagined in the early days of the war. Some people clapped and shook my hand. They called me hero and thanked me for my service. Others, college kids, men in suits, mothers with children, looked at me like I was something they'd scraped off their shoes. I heard words like baby killer and murderer hissed under their breath as I walked past. It didn't matter which side they were on. Both of them were wrong about me. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't a villain in the way they thought either. I was something worse, someone who had walked so far into hell that I couldn't remember the way back. At home, I tried to slip into my old life like it was a coat I'd left in the closet. But it didn't fit anymore. My parents smiled, but their eyes searched me, like they were looking for the boy who had left and finding only a stranger. Old friends lasted a beer or two before the conversation died under the weight of things I couldn't say. I married a woman who thought she could love me enough to fix me. For a while, I even believed her. But the nights got longer. She'd wake to find me sitting on the floor, back against the bed, staring into the dark. Or she'd shake me from a dream where I was shouting, thrashing, my hands clenched around her wrists before I even knew it was her. The nightmares were the worst. Sometimes it was the girl and her mother, frozen in that moment behind the hut. Sometimes it was the old man in the corner of the smoky room, his head snapping back. Sometimes it was faces I didn't even remember killing, all gathered around me, their mouths open in screams I couldn't hear but could feel in my bones. And always, there was the smell. The sharp tang of blood. The thick, greasy smoke of burning thatched roofs. The stink of sweat and fear in a small, airless room. I'd wake gagging, certain I could taste it on my tongue. To quiet the noise in my head, I drank. At first, it was just to help me sleep. Then it was to get through the day. Then it was because I couldn't remember how to be without it. Whiskey, beer, whatever was close at hand. When booze wasn't enough, I found pills, painkillers from an old back injury, muscle relaxants, anything that could make the edges blur. Friends drifted away. My marriage collapsed under the weight of my silences, my rages, my disappearances into bars or long nights driving nowhere. My wife told me once before she left, "You're still over there. You never came home." She was right. I thought about ending it more than once. I had the gun. I had the whiskey. Some nights, the only thing that stopped me was the thought that it would be too easy, too much of an escape. I told myself I deserved the nights, the screams, the eyes. I deserved every second of it. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid that if I crossed that last line, I'd wake up somewhere worse. Somewhere where every face I'd ever put in the ground was waiting for me. And so I kept waking up. Every morning, the same dull light coming through the blinds. The same taste of stale whiskey on my tongue. The same pounding in my head. And the same thought. Every morning I wake up is another failure because it means I'm still alive to remember. People talk about wounds like there's something you can see. A missing limb. A scar that pulls tight when you move. A bullet hole that healed into a jagged line. Those are wounds you can point to, touch, explain. What I have, there's no x-ray for it. No doctor can wrap it in gauze. They call it moral injury now. I didn't have the words for it when I came back. I just knew that something in me had rotted. It's not guilt exactly. Guilt is when you regret a bad decision. This is different. This is knowing you became someone you were never meant to be, someone who broke every rule you thought was unbreakable, and realizing there's no way back to who you were before. I don't think of it as carrying the war inside me. It's more like the war hollowed me out and stayed to live in the space it left behind. I've heard people say, time heals all wounds. Maybe that's true for the kind you can see. But this kind? It doesn't heal. It festers. Some days it's quiet and I can almost pretend it's gone. Other days it feels like fresh shrapnel tearing through me. The worst part is, you start to believe you don't deserve to heal. You tell yourself, I did those things. I stood there and watched. I pulled the trigger. I took the life out of people who never had a chance. And then you decide the pain is what you've earned. It's not that I want to die anymore. It's that I can't imagine living without this shadow following me. Every smile feels borrowed. Every laugh feels like it belongs to a man I left behind in that jungle. I've had people tell me I should forgive myself. I can't. Forgiveness is for mistakes, not for tearing apart the lives of people who never even knew your name. That's the thing about moral injury, it's not in the past. It's in every breath you take after. I left the battlefield, but the war never left me. I've spent most of my life trying not to say these words out loud. Part of me believed that if I never spoke them, they might fade like a bad dream you forget by lunchtime. But they haven't. They've stayed sharp, like broken glass under the skin, cutting every time I move. So here it is. I killed unarmed men. I shot women running with children in their arms. I burned homes with people still inside. I watched others commit acts so vile I still can't repeat them without feeling sick. And sometimes I was the one doing them. I raped. I took what wasn't mine to take. I looked into the eyes of people whose lives I was about to destroy and felt nothing but the cold weight of my own power. I stood over bodies and thought of them as objects, not human beings. I'm not saying this to seek forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm saying it because if I don't, then the truth dies with me, and I've come to believe that's worse than carrying it. If I tell you everything, you might hate me. You might be disgusted. And you should be. But that is the truth war creates. It takes ordinary men, grinds them down, strips away the parts that make them human, and then sends them home expecting them to pretend they never crossed that line. You've heard the speeches. You've seen the parades. You've watched the movies where the hero comes home draped in flags. I'm telling you now, don't trust the easy praise of war. The medals don't weigh as much as the memories. War doesn't make winners. It just leaves survivors. And those survivors carry the battlefield inside them long after the shooting stops. Some of us carry it until we die. I don't tell you this to make you pity me. I don't need pity. I tell you because someone will try to send you into the same fire I walked through. They'll wrap it in words like honor and duty and service. They'll make it sound like you'll come back stronger. But you won't come back the same. And maybe if you know the truth, you'll think twice before stepping onto that plane. Maybe you'll ask the questions I never asked. Maybe you'll see the cost before you're the one paying it. I can't undo what I've done. I can't give those people back their lives. The only thing I can do is tell you the truth, and hope it's enough to stop even one person from becoming what I became. If I tell you everything, you might be disgusted by me. But that's the truth war leaves behind. And it's better you hear it from me than learn it yourself in some village halfway around the world. I'm not a hero. I'm not a villain in the way you imagine. I am a man who did terrible things because war made it possible, and sometimes because I wanted to. And that's the part I'll carry until my last breath. I'm an old man now. My hands shake when I lift a cup of coffee. My knees ache when I walk down the stairs. Most days I forget where I put my glasses or what I came into the kitchen for. But I never forget their faces. It's strange the way memory works. The good parts of my life, birthdays, laughter, quiet moments by the fire, blur and fade at the edges. But the war stays sharp. The sights, the sounds, the smells, they're as clear now as the day they happened. The rain is falling outside tonight. The kind of steady rain that turns the world gray and soft. I sit by the window watching it trace long paths down the glass. People pass by, their shoulders hunched, hurrying to someplace dry. They don't look up. They don't see me. Maybe that's for the best. I've spent decades trying to live in a world that no longer feels like mine. I've tried to talk about it and I've stayed silent. Both are hard. Both leave me feeling hollow. Sometimes I wonder what might have been different if someone had told me the truth before I went to war. If someone had looked me in the eye and said, "You won't come back the same. You might not come back at all." Maybe I would have listened. Maybe I wouldn't have. But I know this. Someone out there right now is standing where I once stood, thinking they're ready for whatever comes. Thinking the stories they've heard are the whole truth. If that's you, I hope you hear me. War is not what they tell you. It will give you moments you'll wish you could forget, and then it will make forgetting impossible. It will take your sleep, your peace, your soul, and it will leave you alive just long enough to watch what's left of you crumble. I'm not telling you to be a coward. I'm telling you to understand the cost before you pay it. If my story means anything, let it be a warning. Not just about the bullets and the bombs, but about what comes after. The years, the silence, the weight you carry when everyone else has gone home. The rain is heavier now. My reflection in the glass looks like a stranger wearing my face. Behind my eyes, the jungle is still green and wet, and the air is still heavy with smoke. Somewhere out there, in that place only I can see, the war is still going on. If hell has a gate, I've built it inside my own mind. And I am the only guard, unable to leave.